May the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be pleasing to you, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer. So the church calendar is circular. Today we celebrate the end of the liturgical calendar. And next week, we will begin a new liturgical year with the beginning of Advent. This circular calendar is just one sign that the church believes that endings are beginnings, that when we think we are at an ending, we might really be simply at a new beginning. Today's image of the reign of Jesus, this image of the risen Jesus as King, points to the beginning that will begin next week, looking at the incarnation and the nativity of Jesus. Our ending is a new beginning. This also lends further credence to our belief in the now and not yet nature of our faith, in which we have heard Jesus proclaim during his ministry that the kingdom of God is here, that the kingdom of God is a now and not yet phenomenon. Our gospel today finds an interplay between Jesus and Pilate. Pilate asked Jesus, "Are you a king, the king of the Jews?" And Jesus almost playfully says, "Is it you that is saying this, or are others telling you this?" With this encounter and this banter, Jesus seems to be recounting the question that he asked of the disciples. Who do people say that I am? And who do you say that I am? This encounter seems to be similar, as if Jesus is asking, Pilate, who do you say that I am? Despite this question, Pilate doesn't appear to struggle with or contemplate the question, as the disciples did. And Jesus, in his silence, appears to be saying to Pilate, "It is I who am the king, the one who reigns over all creation, but one unlike any other you've ever seen before. It is I who am truth, not just truth for here and now, but truth for all creation, for all time." Now, as Americans, we have little context of what a king is. Sure, we see King Charles in England, for example, but we don't have a context for what a king was when we hear Jesus proclaimed as king. So what was a king? Well, the king was the author and guarantor of prosperity of his people. People expected peace, prosperity, security, abundance from their king. And unfortunately, our understanding and imagery of king also gets diminished by the paternalistic use and overtones of the title of king. But what do we see in Jesus? In Jesus' reign? What kind of reign do we see? Well, I think we see a reign unlike any other, a reign of servanthood. We hear Jesus talk about leadership and discipleship throughout the Gospels, that one who wishes to lead or be great must be servant of all. We hear Jesus say that following him, following his reign, is to pick up and carry our cross. Jesus is the servant king, who washed the feet of the disciples, who healed those who were the least among us, who spoke to the Samaritan woman and others who we were told to ignore. Throughout his ministry, Jesus spoke of his kingdom, his reign, his empire, this kingdom of God. He noted that the kingdom was right here. It is right here, he said. And it is embodied in Jesus through his ministry, his being with people, his being with the least. That is the kingdom. And we are called to be beloved community, to be the image of that kingdom that is now, but not fully yet. We are called to be the embodiment of this reign of servanthood, to be the embodiment of this servant king. The kingdom, it is here now, but not fully yet. We recently have gone through an election, a very challenging election, which, like most elections, ask us, America, who do you say that we are? Who do you want to be? Like every election, there are those who are happy with the outcome and others who are not. Certainly, elections have ramifications, and elections say something about who we are and what we dream about as individuals and as a country. But I think we need to take a step back and remember that for those of us who profess to follow this servant king, nothing has really changed. Our task and our call are still the same. No matter the outcome of this election, we would still be following a king that is not of this world. The reign of this servant king will never be fully realized in this nation, in any country, in our world. And so our task and our call is really the same. It may be an ending, but we know from our faith and our liturgical calendar, endings are just new beginnings. To proclaim this reign, to proclaim this servant king, is a subversive act. To turn the logic of the world on its head, where the first are last and the last are first, where the least and the marginalized are vivid dwelling places for this king, for this kingdom. It is where we proclaim that love is greater than sin, greater than greed, greater than violence, greater than hate. That love is greater than all things. It is where we commit ourselves every time we remember our baptismal covenant and our baptismal vows, to seek and serve Christ in all persons, loving our neighbor as ourselves, to strive for justice and peace among all people, and to respect the dignity of every human being, to strive to safeguard the integrity of God's creation, and respect, sustain, and renew the life of this earth. It asks us, who do we say this king is? What do we say that this kingdom is? And placed before us is a choice between, are we going to be people of the empire or people of the gospel, proclaiming the kingdom of God and beloved community? Martin Luther King writes, "What is needed is a realization that power without love is reckless and abusive, and love without power is sentimental and anemic. Power," he says, "at its best is love implementing the demands of justice, and justice at its best is power correcting everything that stands against love." So this reign of Jesus is a reign unlike any other. It is based on servanthood, in which love is the rule and justice is the call. Where the last become first, the first become last. Where the marginalized are where this reign and presence is most visibly present. Where the beginning is that of a child born in a manger, whose love and servanthood brought him to a horrible death, simply because of his love, whose reign and righteousness were proclaimed on the third day for all eternity. So here we are at the end of the church calendar, preparing to mark another beginning by looking at the end of the story. A story that calls us to answer the question, who is this Jesus for us? And how can I proclaim this reign of servanthood that is unlike any other in my life and my actions?